Great. Thanks, Kimberly. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to you all. Thanks for joining us. I see we have about 70 people on the call, so that's fantastic. You're not going to just hear from me today. You'll hear from, I think, all of the members of our senior team here at ORCID. So I'll do a bit of an introduction, then I'll hand off to Tom Demeranville, our product director. You'll also hear during the course of the event from Julie Petro, Director of Communications, Paloma Marin Ariza, Associate Director of Engagement, Ivo Weinbergen, Director of Engagement, Will Simpson, Director of Technology, Tommy Tepper, Director of Finance and Operations, and Stephanie Harley, Director of Staff and Board Engagement. So as I said, I'll be doing a bit of a quick introduction and a recap of ORCID, and also talking about our new strategy plan, which we're happy to unveil at this town hall. And then we'll dive into each of the themes, each of the sections of those of the new strategy. You'll hear a little bit about our longer term objectives, a recap of what we got done in that area last year, and then a little bit more of a drawdown on our plans for 2026. Finally, we'll do a brief governance update, and we'll aim to leave plenty of time for Q&A at the end. So please do type your questions into the Q&A box in Zoom. So I'm sure most of you know this. ORCID provides three main services: the ORCID ID itself, the unique persistent identifier, an ORCID record, which is a digital CV or profile connected to that ORCID ID, and last but not least, the ORCID APIs, set of application programming interfaces that enable our data to be accessed and used, well, your data more accurately, and really put us at the heart of this interconnected network of scholarly systems. We'll talk about that a little bit more later on. As I'm sure many of you know, we're a very international organization. We keep track these days of active researchers using ORCID, rather than just the number of records. We've just crossed over the threshold of 11 million yearly active researchers. They are from literally every country in the world, which is fantastic. As I'm sure many of you know, we're a member-supported organization, coming up close to 1,500 members, still growing, across 68 countries. And the majority of our members participate through one of our 29 national or regional consortia. And you also may not know that as an organization ourselves, we're very global. We now have 44 people in the team, and we are spread across 14 countries with staff on every continent apart from Oceania and Antarctica. So an important aspect of ORCID's persistence and resilience is our financial sustainability. We aim to generate a modest surplus every year in order to both fund a reserve for unexpected contingencies and allow us to invest in our product and our team and better fulfilling our mission. So 2025, we once again generated a modest surplus. Nearly all of our revenue comes from membership fees. So thank you very much if you're from a member organization. We saw our membership revenue grow by about 7% last year, contrasted against a 12% growth in expenses. But even with that, we were able to generate a surplus, or our net operating income, as we call it, of about 12%, which is within our target range. So I mentioned that I'm going to talk a little bit about our new strategy, or in fact, we're going to spend most of this town hall talking about our new strategy. It's called ORCID 2030, Advancing the Future of Research. We have 5 strategic themes there. You can see on the right: empowering researchers, connecting research information, broadening our community, advancing trust and integrity, and then strengthening ORCID's resiliency. But before we dive into those, I'll talk a little bit about how we built the strategy. We have a fairly standard structured planning process at ORCID. Everything is ultimately guided by our vision and our mission statement and our values as an organization. As a mission-driven non-profit organization, That's our focus. And we develop, you'll see in the third tier there, a set of strategic priorities, a strategic plan every 4 years. That's what we're going to talk about in this discussion. But we'll also drill down to our annual plan, which we do every year to give us a bit more detail, a bit more focus, and to make sure that we are actually executing and making progress against those strategic priorities. Why do we do this? Why do we go through this process? Well, we want to make sure of two things. One is that we have alignment in the organization such that the work people are doing on a day-to-day basis, the decisions they're making, ultimately they can understand how they relate to our mission, our values, vision, and our values. And we also want to be able to track progress or have traceability from that detailed work planning all the way up to how that work helps us achieve our mission and values. And there's a cadence to each of these cycles. As I mentioned, the strategic plan, we settled into a 4-year cycle for this. We review our mission and values every 10 years. This was done by our board as part of this strategy process. And our vision we really see as this kind of aspirational statement of where we'd like the world, what we'd like the world to look like if we're successful. So that essentially is unchanging. And if we achieve the vision, then maybe we don't need to exist anymore. So we've published now our second strategic plan under this framework. Some of you may be familiar with the first plan we published under this process, which is called From Vision to Value. Now we're on to ORCID 2030. You can download the document from the URL there, and we'll send these slides around after the webinar. Before we start diving in, one more slide on the process. For this strategy cycle, we used a methodology called SOAR. That's an acronym that stands for Strengths, Opportunities, Aspirations, and Results. Little bit similar to the SWOT analysis some of you might be aware of and have used in the past, is a bit more common. But this process has two things that we liked about it. It's very, very positive. It's based on the principles of appreciative inquiry and positive psychology. Not that we didn't think about, opportunities that could be turned around and thought of as threats, but the process really emphasizes the strengths and opportunities of the organization. And the other thing that we really liked is very collaborative. So we spent most of last year working on this. We held so-called SOAR workshops with our full team, with our board, with our consortia interest group, and with our researcher advisory council. So very broad input from many of our stakeholder groups that then rolls up into the strategy we're going to talk about today. So with that, let me hand over to Tom, who's going to talk about empowering researchers.
Great, thanks, Chris. So yeah, as Chris said, I'm going to talk about empowering research as our first strategic theme of the day. This really is an evolution of the previous theme we had, which was increasing value to researchers. And it just sees us taking a bit more of a broader approach to a similar set of goals around serving our research community. We've always had research at the center of everything we do, and that continues to be the case. So we have a set of strategic objectives associated with this theme, and this you'll see is in common with all the other themes as we go through. And the first objective here really is to help researchers build their reputations and visibility. I think this has come out over the last few years with an increased focus on things like research integrity and research security, and we want to make sure that we're helping researchers address the challenges that they're facing at the moment. We're also continuing to try and make ORCID smarter, putting more automation in place. This is one of the #1 requested features by our researchers. All 11 million, not all 11 million, but quite a large percentage, would like us to do a bit more to help them keep their records up to date. And that's something we're definitely working on. And in fact, in a few minutes, I'll show you the progress we've already made on that this year. We continue to explore the value of ORCID beyond core STEM fields. I think there's a bit of a misunderstanding that ORCID doesn't serve people outside of STEM. I don't think that's true at all. In some non-STEM disciplines, we have really good coverage. But we could do better, and I'll show in a second some of the things we did last year to try and improve what we're doing there. Similarly, and I think this is very much related, is enabling researchers to share a broader range of contributions to research. We made progress on this last year, and we'll continue to do so until 2030. And finally, we want to strengthen our outreach to researchers. We've taken a very maybe overly cautious approach in the last 5-10 years to how we talk to researchers, and I think we need to do a little bit more to help researchers understand how we can help them and why we are relevant to their everyday practice. So to recap what we did in 2025, one of the first things, the highlight of the year might have been the fact that we aligned our work type vocabulary with the vocabulary provided by the Coalition of Open Access Repositories. This had the side effect, a desired side effect that we're aiming for, of improving support for non-STEM subjects, as it included work types like moving pictures and sound and speeches, and other types of activities and outputs that are not necessarily weren't represented before. We also enabled researchers to start featuring things on their record. I think this is increasingly important as well. For example, with narrative CVs, you're expected to highlight a subset of your total output, what the 5 most relevant pieces of work for a grant application, for example. And we've added this feature to the ORCID record so that researchers can actually highlight what they think is the most important highlights of their career. Similarly, we've done something with affiliations there. We had feedback that maybe it was sometimes difficult to understand where someone's primary affiliation lay when you look at an ORCID record, and we've addressed that. In fact, we've improved the header overall to make it a much easier to digest, at a glance experience to understand who a researcher is and put them in context. Further than that, we also piloted a new feature that we've just released called Research Connect, and I'll talk about that in a little bit. But this was around improving notifications and automation. And on top of that, and I'd like to call out the fantastic support team we have, we solved 80,000 user support tickets from our researchers. And this is an interesting number because every year, our usage grows. We had a 23% increase in monthly active users last year. But what's interesting there is the number of tickets, as in support requests we get, increase by exactly the same amount. So yeah, we've managed to maintain a really high level of service there, and I'm super proud of the team for all their hard work. So on to the annual plan, what we plan to do this year. We have 5 goals in this area. Firstly, we are trying to improve the automation, helping users populate the record. So jumping straight into addressing one of the strategic objectives I talked about earlier. We're also building a smoother account recovery experience. This can be really frustrating for users if they lose access to their account and they have to talk to our support desk to untangle that. And we'd like it to make that a lot easier for researchers and also for our support desk, right? So they can spend more time helping people on more important problems. Similarly, we're going to be improving the self-service support capabilities. And this is around updating the way that we present help information to researchers. So it's easier for them to solve the problems as they arise, which means they can get on with their day rather than having to wait for responses to support tickets. We're also continuing to improve our user account security features. We did a lot of work on this last year, and we continue to do this. So this is expected behaviors around user security. So things like if you update email addresses on your record, well, you should be notified about that. So then you can check to see if there's a suspicious activity on your account, for example, these kind of things. And these are just industry standard measures that we're putting in place. And finally, we're helping researchers demonstrate the trustworthiness of a track record. And I think this goes hand in hand with our goal of being able to communicate a little bit better with the researchers that use our service. So that's the plan, but we've actually achieved some of this already this year. Building on the pilot I mentioned, around Research Connect, we've actually launched it into production, and we have 11 ORCID members using this functionality now, and a lot more waiting to turn it on. And what it is, it's a mechanism of connecting a researcher with the systems at their home organization that help them keep their record up to date. And very importantly, add a validated affiliation to their record. So the green stamp of trust marker that says this person works for this institution and the institution is saying that's true. So this helps researchers because it means it's easier for them to flow through submission workflows, for example. But it also really helps institutions in that they can connect their systems with the ORCID registry correctly and retrieve and automatically populate their own systems with the data on their ORCID record. So it's a win-win for everyone. Alongside that, we've also improved the way notifications are handled by the ORCID registry, and we're getting a lot better at helping researchers understand the tools and help that's available to them by our ORCID member integrations, of which there are thousands. And finally, before I pass it on, the other thing we've done this year, based on a lot of hard work last year, was updated what we used to call the ORCID search and link wizard, and we've modernized it and made it more helpful for users. And now we have the import works tool. And what this does that we didn't do before is highlights the services that will hopefully help the researcher the most, because these are the services that have passed through ORCID certification. And also, very importantly, these are the services that keep their record up to date over time, which is the number one request we get. So researchers should be able to connect with these services, then the record will be kept up to date over time, and they won't have to spend time filling in forms, which is great. So that's just gone live. You can check it out in the ORCID registry, and we're really hopeful this is going to make a huge difference. And with that, I think I'll pass over and we'll talk about connecting research information.
Thank you very much, Tom. So the next topic or the next theme is connecting research information. As it was happening with the previous one, this is also an evolution of our previous strategies. So included part of the increasing value to members and upholding trust and integrity. And this is all about understanding ORCID framed as a central hub and the community trust network formed by our organizational members. So as part of this theme, we have the strategic objectives. Here we are going to cover the topics about increasing the proportion of member organizations that are contributing data to ORCID records, not only consuming that data. So the idea here is also that the data quality is going to be increased because of the number of good contributions, and things that Tom was mentioning before are going to help also in this avenue. Together with that, we keep working with our community to increase the amount and quality of integrations with ORCID. So not only we have a higher number of integrations that are active, but also they contribute data to different sections. For that, we are going to keep working with the certified service provider network and refining our certification standards so that we can guarantee that all those integrations have actually fulfilled best practices and are up to a very good level. And these will end up meaning, of course, that ORCID roles as a hub of vital data for other services is there. And we are improving the completeness and accuracy of ORCID metadata, and as I was mentioning before. And these strengthens, of course, the relationship with other scholarly infrastructure providers. We've met we've made basically some initial steps in that direction in 2025 with achievements such as the section of editorial services to recognize the activities that researchers are doing when they are part of editorial boards, committees, etc. So that option is already available on the ORCID interface, and you can check that, and also via the ORCID API. We expanded the Certified Service Provider program to include discovery systems that can, of course, but not only limited to that, be part of the import tools. We partnered with Digital Science to host ORCID public data file on BigQuery, and you have more information about that on the webpage, and you can explore now the public data file using BigQuery in a more user-friendly way. we have increased the number of community events that we've hosted, particularly with 28 webinars where we've reached approximately 92 countries. And here, coming back to the topic of ORCID as a hub, we commissioned a white paper on how ORCID interoperates with other person IDs, focusing on national, disciplinary, and proprietary IDs. This is crucial because that's a way to interpret ORCID as a globally interconnected part of the research landscape. The report I was mentioning is ORCID, it's ORCID and not ORCID or. So basically is this idea of position ORCID as a hub for other identifiers and of course for data. This is connected definitely to the global interoperability in interconnectivity of ORCID, as having an ORCID connection facilitates this seamless data flow across these dispersed database and platforms that are sometimes also tied to national boundaries. And we keep a consistent approach to inclusive infrastructure. With that, let me now focus on the plans for 2026. The goals is basically to keep developing that persistent and inclusive infrastructure, but in a way that we can engage with our community to support best practice integration and peer learning, as well as the creation of shared resources. We plan also to update our API to include the data from recently added features, such as the feature works, and then keep working on the relationships and integrations with national researcher ID systems, as I was mentioning from the report and beyond. Refine the support information and documentation and implement improved ways to find the best information so that our audience can understand where they can get that information. And we will work with the digital credentialing community to make it easier for researchers to share their educational achievements. Some steps that we've made this year in that direction is we host an event with our consortium leads in Vancouver 3 weeks ago, and we've already discussed with them way to co-create those integration resources, and we've also have several conversations and continue active conversations with different national IDs system and identities such as EduID or Vidvan ID in India. And with that, I will hand over to Ivo for the next topic.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are. Coming to you from the Netherlands, I'll walk you through our third strategic theme, which is broadening our community. So this theme is a direct and important evolution of our successful work on increasing global participation, which was one of our previous themes. And it represents our continued dedication to regions with lower ORCID adoption, but it also expands our ambition as we'll focus on reaching a wider set of communities and use cases. So this theme is basically about two things, which is deepening our global reach and ensuring our existing members get the maximum value from their participation. As for our objectives that you can see here for the next few years, we'll focus on expanding our network of community partners in parts of the world with fewer resources and lower participation, and explore new models to engage with them. A key example here would be the rollout of the affiliate network, which I'll talk about a bit more later. We'll also want to increase engagement with international and intergovernmental organizations that work in research and education to solidify our relationship with these organizations and stay involved in things like policy developments. Another focus will be on expanding ORCID's relevance to use cases such as research administration, digital credentials, research security, and research funding. And an example of this is our involvement with MyCreds in Canada. Reducing barriers to integration and participation is a continued effort from ORCID's perspective, and it's aimed at helping all our member organizations gain maximum benefit from the membership, which is, of course, key to broadening our community. And finally, we'll also investigate how we can secure the long-term future of our Global Participation Fund. We're already preparing for our 8th grant cycle this year, and the funding program has been very successful in growing community awareness and capabilities in terms of ORCID and persistent identifiers in general. Taking a quick look back at our 2025 achievements in terms of increasing our global participation and broadening our communities, we've had some significant successes there. For instance, we gained 2 new consortia in regions that have clearly broadened our community, with Uganda launching a national consortium under the leadership of the Research and Education Network, RENU, as well as the Arab States Research and Education Network, ASRAN, launching a regional consortium for the Middle East and North African communities. So these are both great additions to our ever-growing member communities around the world. And we also at the same time saw our other regional consortium, the Latin America and Caribbean Consortium, grow by 9 members across the region. So that's continuing to expand. And in many cases, our global participation program was a key component of the increased global adoption, with our membership equity program on one hand providing the ability to provide discounts to lower middle income countries and lower income countries, and the grants program on the other end to provide support for community and development initiatives. One back. As to the goals for our 2026 annual plan, these are directly tied to the 2030 strategic objectives, which we've already walked through. The focus this year is on concrete actions that will achieve these goals. So we want to implement the affiliate network model for small organizations, specifically small journals. More about that on the next slide. We'll look at expanding our membership model to include potentially a national integration option, which is aimed at countries that operate with a national research information system. We'll focus on increasing strategic engagement with key international policymaking organizations. Also a bit more about that in one of the next slides. We'll want to pursue opportunities to broaden our partnerships and grow and diversify revenues in order to strengthen our resiliency and explore how we can reduce our singular dependency on member revenues, which, as Chris has already mentioned, is about 96% of our total income. And then we'll also revamp the member and consortia directory on our website, making this more easy to navigate and creating more value from it for our community. And then lastly, we'll also work on allowing members and consortia leads to manage their own API credentials for themselves in the member portal, so that they don't need to reach out to ORCID support for things that they can do themselves, making everything a bit more efficient and saving everyone time and effort. So a bit more about the affiliate network. So this will be a non-membership based model designed with small journal publishers in mind. However, open to organizations that fit the requirements and can benefit from the new model. This was approved by our board in December of last year, after we've worked last year on trying to figure out this model, which was quite complex because it was quite different from what we normally do. So this year we'll look at figuring out the internal processes and internal system flows for this new model to work. It requires a bit of a different way of working internally, but we aim to have the affiliate network live by year end or early 2027. As you can see here, the model works by having affiliate organizations, which are the small organizations such as small journals that you can see in these small bubbles at the bottom here, interact with ORCID via affiliate network coordinators, which are organizations that have an existing relationship with a large number of small journals in their community. And we expect this model to enable thousands of small journal publishers to be able to connect with the ORCID registry once we have it live. As you can see, aimed at small journals will be heavily reduced fees, though tied to limited services. The real intent is to broaden our community there. We'll also start piloting that during this year. And then lastly, for the goal of increasing strategic engagement with key international policymaking organizations. As a widely used identifier by researchers globally, we believe that we have the responsibility to be involved with policymakers and leading institutions to ensure that we continue saving researchers time and enabling transparent and trustworthy connections. This is why strengthening our relationships and participation with these strategic organizations is one of the goals for this year, and presumably also beyond this year. Institutions and organizations such as listed here, the EU, EOSC, World Bank, CERN, OECD, etc. These are all very important to our communities that we serve, as well as our long-term mission. So having a good relationship with them is going to be a key focus in order to stay tied to them. And with that, I'll hand over to the next theme.
Thank you, Ivo. So when we were developing ORCID 2030 last year, one of the things that we kept landing back on was just how much the world has changed since we published our previous strategic plan in late 2021. So issues like research misinformation, generative AI, the complexity of digital identity, and not to mention the quickly shifting geopolitical boundaries, they've moved from the periphery of everyone's awareness right to the center of everyone's attention. So to help the scholarly community mitigate some of those challenges, we've defined some key objectives under advancing trust and integrity to help guide our work through to 2030. And most importantly, we're seeking to strengthen our role as a key provider of trust to help combat misinformation. Now, part of these efforts are technical, as you'll see in a couple of slides, but we also want to provide leadership working with our community to help address research integrity issues head on. But we're also keeping the focus on the researcher as they're still the center of everything that we do and helping them demonstrate their track record through open, transparent evidence of their contributions. We're also looking to increase our footprint in the wider digital identity ecosystem to ensure ORCID remains a seamless part of a researcher's daily workflow. And finally, we want to remain steadfast in our geopolitical neutrality. We believe that ORCID can be a bridge in a divided world, especially with our research ecosystem and working with all stakeholders on equitable terms. And by staying true to our values of openness, trust, and transparency, we can help ensure that the global research infrastructure remains not only responsive to these current challenges, but resilient to challenges we can't even imagine yet. In early 2025, we completed the rollout of a new approach to how our API is used. And as a mission-driven organization, we want to ensure that the cost of maintaining the registry is shared equitably among those who get the most value from it. So by introducing a daily usage limits for anonymous access, we hoped to encourage our high-volume users to join our registered community. And the response was incredible. It only took a few months for anonymous requests to drop by over 70%. And this wasn't just about lower numbers, as you can see in that graph. It was really a successful migration. And we moved from 77 million anonymous hits a month down to 17 million as users transitioned into registered channels. Now, that shift allows us to keep our public services broad and accessible while ensuring we can better support the specific needs of our highest volume users. And in doing so, we were able to reach out to organizations who were at those limits consistently just to work with them and help them find the right fit for their needs. We discovered that some of them were existing members, and with them, we helped move them to tools that provide even more value for their membership. And we even welcomed some new members, giving them the opportunity to bring their expertise and support into the ORCID ecosystem. And really, ultimately, this API policy is about building a more transparent and sustainable future. And it ensures that the organizations driving the most traffic are also helping to support the infrastructure that we all rely on. We feel it's a major step towards a more balanced and trusted and community-supported registry for everyone. And now looking forward, for our 2026 annual plan, we have 5 priorities that translate our high-level goals that we already discussed a little earlier into measurable impact for the global research community. Now, the first priority is clarity. And this is really about making it easy for our members to articulate exactly how ORCID advances trust and integrity in their specific workflows. Another major focus for this year is the expansion of trust marker adoption. And we aren't just looking for more trust markers and ORCID records, we're expanding the types of data that they accompany to provide a more complete view of a researcher's scholarly bona fides and to help them to demonstrate their scholarly track record. And hand in hand with this, we're working to increase publisher collection and use of ORCID IDs at the point of submission, especially for co-authors. And I'll talk more about that and about our plans for trust markers in general on the next slide. And trust isn't just built by the quality of the data that can be found in the registry, it's also about our ability to proactively filter out what doesn't belong. In other words, as the ORCID registry grows, so does our responsibility to protect it. And in 2026, we're implementing enhanced spam detection and mitigation capabilities. And this is a critical defensive measure to ensure the ORCID registry remains a clean, high signal environment for everyone who relies on our data. Finally, we're conducting a comprehensive review to advance ORCID's geopolitical diversity. As Ivo talked about earlier, our mission only works if it's really global, and we want to ensure that our tools are accessible and relevant to researchers everywhere, regardless of their local infrastructure or their geopolitical standing. And as I mentioned on the previous slide, I want to talk a little bit more about the work that we're doing in 2026 to enable organizations to add more and more diverse trust markers to ORCID records and to create a richer, more reliable digital CV for every ORCID record holder. And one of the things we're doing is certifying a wider range of service providers to ensure that the platforms scholarly organizations and researchers already use every day are pre-configured to add high quality, verified data and trust markers directly to the records. Alongside this, we're working one-on-one with our member organizations to activate these integrations where they're subscribed. As I mentioned a minute ago, a lot of our members, they're already subscribed to these scholarly services, and they simply just need to flip a switch to enable them. So we want to make sure our members are fully utilizing these connections to automate the flow of data that they hold about their researchers into their ORCID records. We also recognize that adoption is a social process as much as a technical one. So this year, in our engagement with members and consortia, we want to showcase real-world integrations. And by sharing these success stories and these technical how-tos across the community, we hope to lower the barrier to entry for smaller or less resourced institutions. And finally, we're tackling a persistent gap in scholarly attribution, the co-author. We're actively encouraging journals to collect ORCID IDs for all authors, not just the corresponding author. This is to ensure that every contributor receives the credit that they deserve and that the trust markers on their records are as complete as possible. And together, we hope that these 4 initiatives will help make the ORCID record a more powerful and multidimensional proof of a researcher's impact across their career. And with that, I will hand it over to Tommy to discuss strengthening ORCID's resiliency.
Thank you, Julie. Appreciate it. Strengthening ORCID's resiliency. Yes, this includes a number of efforts around both technology and our operations teams that we'll go through. The strategic objectives for our new plan, 2030, would include, as Ivo mentioned early, the diverse support and diversification of revenue streams. For example, the affiliate network that was mentioned a few minutes ago. We're always looking to continually improve our operational processes to make sure that our funds are going towards mission as efficiently as possible. We're continuing with our cybersecurity program, reaping great benefits from this already with the advancement and security of tools that we've been deploying within our own architecture, and related business continuity plans to make sure that we're here day to day as well as for the long run. Our understanding of AI and ML, machine learning technologies, is advancing as these are really progressing quite at a startling pace worldwide. And we will look to deploy them thoughtfully within our own processes to advance our mission and to make our own operations more efficient. And then last, supporting our staff by being a great place to work as we are now, and underscoring the support and care of our staff for their own benefit. In 2025, we had a number of efforts that advanced these elements. First, in cybersecurity, a new admin portal for our support staff, which had security features, which makes their efforts a little bit more straightforward and ensures continuity. We separated our hosting environments, which had been integrated. So we now have separate test, sandbox, and production environments. And we introduced new security tools for our staff, such as VPN technology, as well as some email scanning tools to eliminate spam, phishing, and other instances. And last, deployed the new static application security testing. For staff benefits, we looked for a lot of opportunities for our staff to engage each other. For example, we run an annual retreat for staff, which is very important to our culture. We launched our first sabbatical program, and it was taken advantage of by a staffer successfully, and we're looking forward to that being now a core part of how we assist our staff and keep their health and mental wellness top of mind. And last, we published a promotion policy and successfully implemented a central talent management platform, both to make sure that staff have clarity on their own career track, and we are supporting them on that in their development of their own skills. And last, under efficiency and transparency, we moved our institutional relationship from Capital One to PNC Bank. Many of you got the communications related to that, and that was relatively smooth change in terms of that relatively important relationship that we maintain. We refined our staff onboard and offboarding processes and benchmark compensation. These are equity measures that we want to make sure, given our global presence in 14 nations, that all our staff are being treated equally and fairly. And so with that, I think I will hand over to Steph.
I think we'll be doing this.
I think it's me.
Oh,
it's
sorry,
me. That's all right. I'll jump in and do it and tell everyone about our 2026 goals under this strategic theme. We will finalize ORCID's cyber security program, ensure full compliance with current OR specification, ensure the scalability and maintainability of ORCID's databases, implement improved bot management for the registry. In addition to that, we will be strengthening the consistency and alignment of member, grantee, and event data in our internal systems, continue to improve internal workflow and project management processes, streamline our member billing and collections processes, and also support employees to leverage their strengths, address development areas, continuously grow within the organization, further improve and align staff benefits and employment administration, and provide staff with more opportunities for connection and collaboration. And going into a bit more detail about some of those, here are some highlights from our cybersecurity program. We're in the final year of a 3-year cybersecurity program. Tommy mentioned earlier business continuity plans, which we're working on, and by the end of the year, those will be tried and tested so we can recover easily from disasters should they happen. We're working on cloud security posture management tools and processes, which is looking at our configurations in our cloud services in AWS and making sure they don't have any security issues within them, and we're following best practices. And we will be adopting a set of industry standard security guidelines to make sure we can continue to follow best practices, and that's at the level of our AWS cloud configurations, database configurations, right down to operating system level. We'll also ensure full compliance with the current OR specification. The registry currently supports OR 2.0, which it has done since launch, but the latest version is 2.1 and does have some new security features which we want to offer to members. And while we're doing that, we will also make sure that our implementation is fully standards compliant and remove some of the non-standard behavior in our current implementation. And finally, we will ensure the scalability and maintainability of ORCID's database. So in the registry, we will be moving up to the latest version of Postgres, the database we use, and that will improve security, but also has some performance benefits. So hopefully will be a boost to the whole system. And while we're doing that, we will, wherever we can, we will take advantage of managed services, for example, AWS, RDS. And the advantage of that is that it will reduce the amount of effort we spend within the team, setting up and configuring the databases, but also will make the system more secure and more resilient in the process of that. So with that, I will hand over to Stephanie for a bit more detail about some of the other goals.
Great. Yes, and I'll just speak a little bit about what we'll be doing in 2026 to ensure that we make ORCID a great place to work. As you know, ORCID's been remote since our founding in 2012. So with our remote distributed team, we're really intentional about how we build out our staff programs and ensure our team's growth and that we have bonds throughout the team, connection, and of course, staff equity across the different countries in which staff are based. So this year's focus really is on professional growth. We will be building out a competencies framework to provide greater clarity for growth opportunities, and we'll continue to invest in our professional development program. In terms of benefits, we will be conducting or continue to conduct a thorough review and potential expansion of benefits, including supplemental health, sick leave, and retirement to ensure worldwide equity, and also focus on deepening connection and collaboration with our team. As Tommy mentioned, we host our annual all-staff retreat that allows us to have a week in person to really connect and work together, and we'll work on creating more intentional spaces for both virtual and face-to-face connection throughout the year. With that, I'll provide a brief governance update with I serve as the board secretary as well. So I'd like to welcome our two newest board members, Devika Mandali, who is the director of the Information and Library Network, or InfLibNet, in India, and Mercury Shintindo, who is the executive director of the Africa Bioethics Network in Kenya. And with Devika and Mercury joining the board, we now have representation of 11 different countries across 15 board seats. We're quite proud that our board really reflects our stakeholders throughout the world, across disciplines, and as a community-governed organization, we strive to have a board that reflects our community. We're also happy to welcome our new board chair, Heath Marks, who is the CEO of the Australian Access Federation in Australia. Heath is just beginning his second term on the board, and we're delighted to have him in this new role. So we'd like to thank you all for joining us today, and again, look out for our annual report that will be released soon. With that, I will hand it back to Kimberly for Q&A.
Thanks, Stephanie, and thanks to all our senior team for talking us today about what happened in 2025, what's already happened in 2026, and our plans through 2030. We do have time for Q&A, so I invite anyone with questions to please submit them via the Q&A box, which you'll find in your Zoom toolbar. The first question that we have, it's got a lot of context in it, but Paloma, this one's for you. So to summarize, we recently did a webinar and published a blog about the pure ORCID integration. And Veronica is curious, how does ORCID support ORCID integration at institutions that do not use pure as their current research information system, which takes academic data and is then harvested onto the Elsevier platform, which is fed into a closed system? So how does ORCID support open source initiatives, and how can this be reconciled with ORCID's strategy of openness and the concept of open science, which is enshrined in many university development plans?
Absolutely. So thank you very much for that question, which is very interesting. So ORCID supports integrations with any kind of system. So that can be from a commercial solution such as pure, open source, or even a custom solution that the institution is developing on their own. In particular, to the question about our recent probably support to different open source solutions through the Global Participation Fund that was also briefly mentioned in this presentation, we've supported the integration of DSpace, CRIS, and ORCID, so the enhancement of that integration, particularly with the login functionality. Also, in DSpace repository, the improvement of the functionality with ORCID, and that was presented last year in 3 different webinars, one in English, another one in Spanish, and another one in Portuguese. Then we've also supported the improvements in the Dataverse ORCID connection, also via DataSite. This is currently in progress and has been done together with the Global Community Dataverse Consortium, and also in the Research Information Management System, Vivo. This is also at the moment going on, and this has also been together with DSpace thanks to the collaboration with Lyrasis in the US. So this is a general overview of what we are currently doing with open source platforms that are globally applicable or used, but also there are also some local open source initiatives, like for example, MyCore in Germany, with which we are collaborating.
Thanks, Paloma. And then a follow-up question that's somewhat related is, does ORCID have any new ideas on how to try and engage vendors that have traditionally been difficult to engage with the CSP program?
Let me take that one. Hi, Monica. People often think that ORCID can influence this, and we try our best. We have, a great engagement team who's working with everybody in the community, from the open source platforms that Paloma just mentioned to all the commercial vendors. But at the end of the day, we don't have that much influence because, particularly for the commercial platforms, we don't pay the bills, right? We're not customers of theirs. So we do encourage anybody who'd like to see either an integration that's not there, or even better, a platform that you're using which is not certified, become certified. Put that requirement in your RFPs, put that into your licensing agreements. You're the folks who can apply the pressure. And we do have a model clause. I'd be happy to share with you. It's on our website that will help you do that. And of course, for the open source platforms, as Paloma mentioned, we've had a number of platforms move towards certification via our grant program. We have two grant cycles a year. We have a whole program that's focused on improving the integrations of open source platforms. So if you're involved in one of those communities, look out for our next grant cycle, and we certainly welcome applications for that.
Yeah, additionally on that, as we see an increase in our certified service providers, we would expect that that builds a certain pressure on the providers, the service providers that aren't yet interacting with us or engaging with us, to maybe pay more attention and try to work with us more. We're always open to working with organizations that enjoy working with us as well.
Well, thanks, Ivo and Chris. Monica also had another question. I think, Tom, you might be best to answer this one, but one of the strategic objectives that we've talked about is how to make the ORCID registry smarter through automation. Do you have any examples or things in mind what that could look like?
Yeah, so I've highlighted 2 of the things that we've already achieved this year towards that goal. And they're really about connecting researchers to systems that can help them, that already exist, right? We know there's a huge amount of automation already out there. And one of the problems that institutions or these systems or researchers have is they're not aware of each other, right? So what we're really trying to do is connect these researchers with the systems that make the most sense to them to help them out. And we're actively tracking the impact of what we're doing at the moment. And with the Researcher Connect program, we'll be reaching out to an awful lot of ORCID members who have these automatic systems and either A, have not engaged with Researcher Connect yet, or B, have an automatic system like a CRIS system that can automatically update ORCID records, but have not enabled that functionality within their own institution. And there's a huge amount of unlockable value there that is simply one click away, and maybe some policy work as well. So it's never this simple, right? But there are systems out there that can just be enabled that already exist, which will provide automation to a huge quantities of researchers. So that's what we're going to be working on throughout the rest of the year, is tracking the impact of what we've just done and trying to bring the adoption of those things up in line with what we'd actually expect them to be.
Thanks, Tom. Our next question is, what does the path look like for a commercial vendor in the Middle East to start building with ORCID? And where have you seen that work well?
I might take that one. So the path is regardless the region. So if you're based in the Middle East, it will be exactly the same. Just get in touch with us. It might be analysis of the type of service you're offering. We classify our services in, or the workflows for an integration in different tracks, like research information system, submission system, grant management system, and also repositories. But we can also see other and discovery systems, and we can also see other alternatives. We've seen different integration paths that have worked very well. And in the Middle East, we are at the moment working with different initiatives, also our regional consortium serving the Arab states, but also other platforms like the Egyptian Knowledge Bank offering support for Egyptian researcher knowledge. So I hope this answers your question, but we also have an email that you can write to us and we can discuss this further.
Thanks, Paloma. I think we have time for one more question, so I'll give folks another few seconds if anybody wants to submit something. While doing so, I'm going to share another link in the chat to our upcoming events calendar. We actually have a webinar tomorrow. If you haven't gotten your ORCID fix, we're going to be featuring Health Research Board from Ireland. They're going to talk about their ORCID integrations. I'm not seeing anything else come through, so I do want to thank everyone for joining us and thank the ORCID senior team for their real quick, Paloma, which email would you like folks to reach out to about integration?
Membersupport@orcid.org. I think I typed it, but it disappeared. But yeah, we can share that also after the session.
Yes, and I also put the email in the chat, but I'll share it in our follow-up emails as well. So as we wrap up today, Chris, any final words you'd like to share with the community?
Yeah, so just thank you so much all for both attending today and for participating in our community. I think we're up to about 120 attendees at one point, so that's fantastic. We're excited both by the 4-year plan that we set out ahead of us, but also what we're getting down to this year. But we can only achieve everything we do with your support. So thank you so much, and we all look forward to working with you to keep moving forward throughout the rest of the year. Thanks very much.
Thanks, everyone.
Cheers.
Yeah. Bye-bye.